go. Give me that 5, sucker.
Day 2 of the Bassmaster Kayak Fishing Championship. Everything changed, y'all. It went from this to this. We're gonna jump right into it, and I'm gonna go through how I figured out what these fish were doing. And really, I don't know if I ever did figure it out, but how I pieced it together for day 2 to try to put together a limit and maintain my position in the top 30 at the Bassmaster Kayak Fishing Championship. Let's go. All right, so I worked my plan from day 1 in reverse, starting out where I finished up on day 1. And I've heard it said before by several people is never trust smallmouth, but I limited out on smallmouth day 1 if you guys watched that video. So I came back to this area thinking, hoping, trying to buck the trend that these smallmouth would still be here and I could limit out again even if they were small ones and then go hunting a bigger bite later in the day. And I tried to force this all day long and it just was not happening. I say all day long, all morning long. Tried to force it. I got a few bites on a football jig. I had some camera issues and didn't get all the footage from the morning, but got a few bites on a football jig, nothing on the Carolina rig, nothing on the A-rig jerkbait. But I moved into this little pocket right here after a few hours. You can see these glass conditions and picked up one little fish to show for my efforts. And at this point, I've been fishing for about 4 hours and had one 13-incher. And I had a big decision to make, to pull the plug, abandon ship, and make a move. With no wind, I feel like that, or felt like that was killing that area that I was fishing on that point. So I decided to make a long run to an area that I found in practice that I didn't fish day 1. I caught one good fish there in practice, but it was a good almost 2-mile run from my starting spot. You can see there it's a flat with a real hard ridge right off the main channel. Had some little stumps. You can see those red dots. There were some stumps and laydowns on it. Decided to run there and then come back at the end of the day to the other area because the forecast was the wind was going to pick up. And when I pulled up on this flat, stood up, saw some of the laydowns and stumps that I was going to target. Got bit right away, hooked up here, and this one I think got wrapped around part of the laydown or part of a twig or something and came off, which was disappointing after that long run. But the plan was to come down here, fish this area, and then when the wind was projected to pick up later, go finish up where I started, which was going to burn about an hour of my day, a little over an hour going back and forth, but I thought it was worth it. This was the only dock on this stretch, so I was hoping there'd be some fish on it. At this point, I was just junk fishing, really, scrambling. Had a Ned rig with a big TRD on it, the hot snakes color, hooked up. Not a giant fish, but hey, fish number 2. As soon as you catch a fish on a tough day, you feel like that could be the momentum changer and you're going to start catching them all of a sudden. This would be the only fish actually that I caught out of this dock, but I was still glad to catch one and kind of reset the clock and reset my confidence for the rest of the day. Got this one measured up. Moved on from there. And tried to fish around the rest of this dock, including up in the slips, fishing the shade lines, things like that. But it really wasn't happening. Tried a variety of baits around this dock, including towing the Ned rig a little bit more, but no go. So a little time had passed. The wind started to pick up. I could feel it. Before it got too hard, because it was going to be in my face, I decided to fish my way back to where I started in the morning. And this little point right here was real similar to what I've been fishing day 1 of the tournament. And I actually got bit here in practice as well. First cast on that point, hooked up. Once again, not a giant. But hey, when you got 2 fish, beggars can't be choosers. Now I've got 3. I've got about 2 hours left in the day to find 2 more fish. So 1 bite an hour is how I do that math in my head. If I can get 1 bite an hour, I can get a limit and hopefully hang in there. I figure if it's tough for me, it's tough for a lot of people. I hadn't been looking at the leaderboard at this point. Now is the time to head on back to my starting spot. You can see the little bit of ripple on the water now compared to when I first started in the morning where it was just straight glass. Got back, there were boats running all over the place, but nobody on my stuff, thankfully. As I've said before, my emergency kit when I need a bite is the Carolina rig, so grabbed out the Carolina rig, started to work this point, was hoping some action would start to happen with a little bit of wind picking up. It was later in the afternoon. It's also close to the major of the afternoon. If you guys pay attention to that stuff, I like to pay attention and be on my best stuff right about that time when they're going to start biting. This stuff just looked right for pre-spawn because you can look back in that pocket there. It's a great spawning pocket. I pulled that free over a little rock and bam. Hooked up on what was going to be number 4. Once again, not a big one. And right here from yesterday or from the day before, this was all smallmouth here. I think I caught one little largemouth in the dozen or so smallmouth right here. Today, no smallmouth. And here's a largemouth, little buck largemouth. Probably moving back in that, getting ready to move back in that little spawning pocket there. I just needed Mama to be around, but Mama was nowhere to be found on this one.
More, let's go.
So now I had a little sense of urgency. I had a little over an hour, or a little under an hour to go. I needed one more bite. I'd gotten enough bites here and knew what was underwater here. I mean, there was tons of cantaloupe-sized rocks and gravel on this point that came way out. It was a perfect staging spot for those fish moved back into these 2 little pockets to spawn. You can see my rod getting kind of hung up in these rocks here. You can even see the rod tip pop loose. A lot of times I was getting bit as I would get hung in the rocks and then either shake it loose or pop it loose or drag it over. And this was pretty close to the boat. It was in a little rock pile. I could feel it. That tungsten weight is key if you're dragging a rig. Pop loose one more time. You hear those boats running in the background. Right by the boat, bang, number 5 is hooked up. I was excited. It might as well have been a 10-pounder just to get that limit fish. Just another little buck bass, but I was excited to have him.
Freaking go! Give me that 5, sucker.
Got up in the shallow water, retied, reorganized, went back out to try to cull 1 or 2 times before the line's out. I had about 30 or 40 minutes, even tied on a big football jig, a big swing head with a big creature bait on it, but nothing doing on the cull. So there you have it, guys. Bassmaster Kayak Fishing Championship 2023 for the 2022 season is in the books. I was happy to scrape out a limit after a tough day, post-frontal conditions. It was a lot warmer. I was a lot drier, but I never could quite figure out the conditions and what was going on with the fish. Like I said earlier, a wise man once said, never trust a smallmouth, and that's what I tried to do, is trust those smallmouth, and they did not repopulate. But I scraped out 5 little buck bass, got my limit, finished at 26th place out of 132 anglers at the championship. Congratulations to Russ Snyders on taking home the Big Blue Trophy. Well done, sir. Now on to the rest of my season so I can try to qualify for next year's championship tournament.